Can a buyer take early possession of a vacant home before closing? We'll learn the answer to that question today on Realty Talk. Honestly, I'm reluctant to say so, but the answer is yes. In fact, the buyer and seller can agree to such an arrangement, but if you're the seller, and especially if you're my client, I would discourage making this move a part of your transaction. It's not that I want to be unhelpful to any buyer, or that I want to encourage anything less than an agreeable, low-stress transaction for everyone, but I do want to help protect people, property, and transactions. It's for that reason I would ask the buyer to seek an alternative arrangement rather than asking the seller for early possession. I'll share some scenarios and make some suggestions based on my experience selling hundreds of homes and working with clients to prepare them for the entire buying and selling process. I said I'm reluctant. That's because an agreement to these terms is rare, so much so that there is no approved form adopted by the Colorado Real Estate Commission. However, if a seller still feels they want to agree to an early possession, it would be in everyone's best interest to have an attorney draft this type of agreement and have it signed by all responsible parties. After all, real estate transactions can be complicated enough without adding layers to the process. I understand, once the buyers and the sellers have packed up their belongings, they want more than anything to move them into their next destination. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's completely normal to be excited about the move and about getting to the end of a long, typically 30-day or more transaction. However, things have and can go wrong when a buyer takes early possession of a house that they are buying, but haven't closed on yet. Not always, but why take a perfectly simple transaction and open it up to possible failure? What happens if something that was working during the showing or inspection then breaks, like a dishwasher, or if the water heater unexpectedly fails? One of the first thoughts is, who's to blame and who's going to pay for the repairs? If you're going to entertain this idea, get all of the possible contingencies in writing before moving forward. Even if an agreeable resolution is reached and everyone seems to be happy, an event like that can sometimes spark an undue case of buyer's remorse that can unravel a transaction in the 11th hour. Buyer's remorse is real. Sure, if the buyers back out, they may surrender their earnest money if they do so in the late stages of the transaction, but if something causes them to panic about their decision, walking away from a few $1,000s may be considered a small price to pay for them. But then the sellers have to start all over again at square one with a blemish on their listing titled "Back on the Market." The problem can even be compounded if selling the house was needed for the seller to move to a new job or required to purchase their next home. Starting over can cause a domino effect that can cause more chaos than you can imagine. Even worse, imagine what could happen when a buyer's loan falls apart and they're living in the house that you now desperately need to get back on the market and sell in order for your plans to work out. Another question buyers have asked is, would it be okay if we only unloaded the moving truck into the garage before closing or park a vehicle in the driveway? Listen, I'm really not trying to be disagreeable here, but it's for your protection, so please don't do it. If you've ever heard of Murphy's Law, you know that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So let's not invite Murphy into the transaction. In any scenario, if the buyers can't close and they or their belongings are in your house, you'll possibly be looking at having to file for an eviction. Most good folks probably never think about that, but that's why I'm here, advocating for my viewers. An eviction can not only take a lot of time, it can become a big financial burden, not to mention incredibly stressful. And for what? As a seller, you are not obligated to provide solutions for an unforeseen hardship of the buyers. But if a seller wants to be helpful, they can suggest some alternative places to stay, like an Airbnb property that they know of, or a hotel that's close by, or short-term storage for their belongings until the closing date. Just don't risk not getting the transaction all the way to the closing table. Simply give possession to the buyers on the intended possession date listed on the contract. It's that easy. You'll save yourself some sleepless nights and protect your bottom line. If you like this content and still have specific questions about your unique situation, just text me or leave them in the comments section below.